we're going to switch the screens around. So I'm going to take these to whoever sits here, if I may, but don't leave. You just find another seat. Screen will come here. It'll be a one-on-one chat between the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and Conservation International Indian team. But everyone's invited to stay. I've got enough food in case you're starving. We can eat after. Right? So that was the whole card. Kurana. Come on. How many?
You want us to in? Happy with it? Have a look at it.
Are your links okay? Good. Kia orana, ka matatato I tātato akoronga I te popungi. Mua ki te reira, ka patia I Papa George Matutu, ki era mai tātato puri ako mata, e te akatu e rei tātato nganga te popungi. George?
Mata kia orana tātou katoto I tara o mātou te ia te maha mane kia tukutu mai tātou no te ao koro ma pupino. Ia te tātou te mamo, tātou no te rana. Tātou mai te kua tātou katoto, tātou tātou o koro, e te au atu ki tātou atu. Nāne o rama mai te ki te kumana ko ke tātou, I te ataki ana I tātou nāro te tātou komkoma I te awa te. Ande kua tātou mai tātou, kua tātou I te. Te tua tō mātou me tua tapu I tō mai te rana te. tua tapu e te rakaraka nei mātou i kāpiki tō ingoa nā kuto mātou atu o Yesu Mesia. Thank you e tua tapu na te ora i māro i rei ki e rauka i mātou mina pōmai e whakatanga koe i mātou i te atanai. Tā au i kāpiki e mātou e tua tapu ki e kutu mai i te ne mutua. Mo tō mātou akakoro ngai i tua tapu. Te e kāpo tō mātou i kone i tua tapu. Karatagi o te pāsere. Teo me mapānaman, teo minita, e peraka te uiari, peraka tō mātou tātou toa, teo ministry tāwa, tātakitai, te kāpiki e ki tāmei ki te uipāngai ki tō tāpu. Nō re rei me tō tāpu, nō wairo mai ki roto pui mātou arata ki e mātou. Aru o mātou oronga ki e māri rāu, koe ana ki e tō mātou ki tuatua, e roka e tō mātou mita. Nō re me tō tāpu, pūpua hotu nei tia, mātou kātoto ki mua i atu. Tautu mo e mātou ki taka mata, e teua ki ta pōtia, te ora mātou i ākoe. Amen.
Amen. E te mata e Papa George, tō tātou Prime Minister e tupu i tātou, Honourable Henry Puna, ki ora ana koe, ko mai tinui ko tō uariki, ki ora ana ko tō koe, tō tātou Minita, Minita George Mackey, ki ora ana koe, pera ko tō tātou Deputy Prime Minister, koe tongo mea no tome, i roto i te tātou nganga te pōpun, ki ora ana. Ki ora ana koe e Mr. Mark Brown. Ki e tuato, ka pati atu ia Kevin Iro ki aina mai ea nāne e hamata mai i te ia tuanga mua o tā tātou program. Kevin Iro.
Kia ora ngā tātou kātoto. PM, DPN, Komatunu, ministers, members of parliament, friends and guests, kia ora. Today we will witness the handing over of a tīwaiwai tāore. It is a tīwaiwai that carries special significance because it represents the work and the legacy that Prime Minister Puna will soon leave behind. I also see it as a symbolic artwork that speaks of a uniqueness of the Cook Islands and the many groundbreaking initiatives and challenges that our nation has set itself. Initiatives like Marae Moana, solar energy aspirations, the natural currency standards in fisheries, which is soon to be called Manatiaki o Te Moana, is just to name a few. Most of my work has been centered on Marae Moana, and just like Tīwaiwai, Marae Moana is unique to the Cook Islands. Like Tīwaiwai, the Marae Moana Act is dynamic and was born out of the principles that our forefathers passed down through the generations. It is our own homegrown creation, and just like Tīwaiwai, it took a community effort to bring Marae Moana to life. Many people here today are responsible for its creation: traditional leadership, government, non-government organizations, and all of our communities played a part in designing a unique piece of legislation that reflects our indigenous knowledge systems and principles, all merged into modern law. We honour PM Puna today for the vision and foresight he demonstrated by shifting the way we and many other countries are now defining what ocean stewardship really requires. Declaring our whole exclusive economic zone as protected or sacred and naming it Marae Moana was a masterstroke. The whole domain approach that the Cook Islands has taken is nothing more than traditional governance systems that we have used on land and our lagoons for hundreds of generations. We are now applying these principles on our open ocean. Te moana nui o kiwa. I'd like you all to enjoy the rest of the presentation and the handover of the Tīwaiwai. I'm sure you will be as inspired as I was when I first saw it. Kia ora e kiwi tuia.
I'd like to call on Ms. Pori Tanner, who is the designer of the Tīwaiwai, and she will run us through the presentation. Pori, thank you.
So, late last year, I was approached by Kevin Edward to work on a design project in collaboration with a global design collective called Papal e Caneta. Papal e Caneta are a global collective of young, bright minds that set their skills, design skills, to solving problems around the world. This year, the Cook Islands was set to host the the Climate Action Pacific Partnership Conference, bringing to our shores leaders from across the Pacific and the world to discuss how climate action can be accelerated, how the Pacific can achieve transformative changes, and lastly, how to inspire action globally. The design challenge that we had was to create a visual representation that would demonstrate the work the Cook Islands does to lead by example in this area, to be launched at the CAP conference. But COVID-19 changed all of that for us as we watch it change all types of important work around the world. What you're looking at is nearly 12,000 squares of Chinese imported fabric sewn together by Cook Island hands to produce a T5i that we've never seen before. It is original, and that the challenge was to take an art form that is normally made communally in groups gathered together and test how or if it could be made using the current COVID-19 restrictions. The colours that you see were used by the Cook Islands as the flags during the COVID-19 restrictions. The T5i, rather than being made traditionally, was made in isolation, individually. So the challenge was to see whether it could fit. Whole sections had to be remade. It proves that we can pair traditional knowledge with modern technology and create something that has never been done before, something that we see taking places in our policies at the moment, and something that the Cook Islands has led the way for with things like Marae Moana. It is my hope that this work will be a symbol of the Cook Islands combining traditional wisdom with technology to create a sustainable economy. One of the most powerful things of this work that we can be proud of is that it was funded by Neotero, and not only do we see the artefact behind me, but it was paid for fairly to our Indigenous practitioners. We invested in education to continue their design skills, and it allowed me as a local designer to take on a local design assistant. While the finished work is what we look at today, the power of this work lies in the hands of Cook Islanders who stitch each square together one by one. It is to them that all of the decisions that the leaders that make and discuss really, have a responsibility. The reason why we used COVID-19 design elements is to also put a sense of urgency in this work, a sense of the responsibility that, on the leaders who will be discussing our future over the next few days. So with that, let us hand it over to our Prime Minister. Oh, and the mamas to come up for a photo, I believe.
Maybe while you're here, we'll ask the Honourable Prime Minister if you could join the mamas and Tori. Tino Manariki sends her apologies. She's unwell today, but if you will, we have one more, the over in the city, but she's the media.
Thank you, Nadia. Poronga Mata. Te unu tona aitiana I tipu kuini. Tēnā te aroa te utu tonga kui tātou, ina roa te rotaka ke, te komai tunui. O te mea me tutu tātou I te Marae Moana. His name will always come up. Akamata tia mua mai a, I tā tātou ka mai tia Kevin Hero. O taura ea nāna e kārawe e tātou I tipu kuini. Arawe mai e ako I tōku rironga I Prime Minister mo tātou, o mana ko I te Marae Moana. Kia kāre mai nei tāna momoia, I tiki mita ki te i te haporo te kaumani, I te kātou. Koe te kimi anga tātou I te rāwena, I te pāruronga, I te āwhanonga, I tō tātou ibu kare. Kare o tātou culture, but also our environment. And so the Marae Moana was born on the need to preserve our ocean. Thank you, Kevin, for that inspiring vision. But thank you, Ko Maiti, to Tātou Uiriki, for taking it out to our people. We see consultations happening today within every important legislation that comes to Parliament. Ko Maiti and the Uiriki were the first to implement that and to put that into effect. They went around all the other islands explaining to our people what the Marae Moana was all about. And you know, they came back with a report that really saw our people pushing, not just for the southern part of our EEZ, but for the whole of our EEZ. And that included my people of Manihiki. In fact, they had a petition from Manihiki that we must accept the extension of Te Marae Moana to the whole of our ocean. So, Almighty, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think it's so fitting because we've heard the rationale for Marae Moana. It's not just an expression of our desire to conserve our marine environment, it's also a desire to preserve our cultural heritage and to project to the world through our actions what the Cook Islands is really all about. So, Te Marae Moana is more than just words. Te Marae Moana is confirmation to the whole world that this little country is very serious about preserving its environment and also showing to the world leadership in ocean conservation. That if we want to and if we are committed to preserving it, we can do it. And we're just showing how that can be done. So, tato katoa to all of us here this morning, all the heads of ministries, various dignitaries, thank you for being here on this very important day. Thank you to the mamas who put this tiwaiwai together. It's a very important symbol for what we're doing this morning. Thank you for your knowledge, thank you for your patience. I like the COVID colors on the tiwaiwai. It means that I can't take this tiwaiwai, it's under quarantine. But yeah, I regret that we're not able to host this huge regional conference, the CAP conference, because we were going to showcase Te Marae Moana. And when I was in Madrid last year at the COP25, I managed to invite Prince Albert of Monaco, who is an old friend, and he accepted the invitation to come. The Prime Minister of Greece, we were taking photos when we were at the palace, the Spanish palace, and this papa-looking guy next to me said, "Kia orana." I was totally surprised, and I asked him who he was, and he said, "Look, I'm the Prime Minister of Greece. Where did you learn the name Kia ora, the words Kia orana?" He said he was here, in Rarotonga and in Aitutaki. He was sitting home one day, and he was wondering, if I drilled through the middle of the earth from where he was, where would he come out at? He looked at the world map, Cook Islands. So he ended up here. And he was very honored to be invited to be one of our guests for our CAP conference. There were others who would have turned up. But what is important is that, yes, we managed COVID very well as a country. And we are doing this morning in commemoration and acknowledgement of the mamas who put together all the hard work, the patient work, to put this tiwaiwai together, symbolic of what we're doing with Marae Moana. You know, it reminds me of my wife. She's been busy, she's taken up tiwaiwai making the last couple of months, And I guess that's something I can look forward to helping her put Tiwaiwais together. Just one request to your mama. This is unique to us, Tiwaiwai. Please don't share it with other mamas from around the Pacific. This is unique to us. You don't share what's unique. Yeah, you let them what am I and want to know about it, but please, this is ours. It belongs to us. And so don't share it. This is our homegrown product. Let's keep it that way. But again, a very big thank you to Tino Monariki and the Mamas of Puekura for their beautiful handiwork that we now display with pride. I will always treasure it, and I will hand it over at the right time to the successor, to the office of Prime Minister. This belongs to the Cook Islands, and it will belong to the whole region of the Pacific, with the hope that people will follow what we're doing with ocean conservation. May God bless the Marae Moana. Kia ora e ke penge.
Thank you, Madam Prime Minister. Please ask for the MMR presentation on screen. Right now, I'm going to ask and call up Ms. Alexis Wolfgang, Senior Fisheries Policy Officer, to take us through this part of the program.
Kia ora tātou katoa, Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, kaumatu nui, Ministers, Heads of Ministries, Honourable guests. Today I'm presenting to you an ambitious and yet important policy. It's an initiative that implements the principles that were established in the Marae Moana, setting out a framework for sustainable management of our marine resources. In May last year, many of you participated in a 3-day workshop to create a new direction for our tuna fisheries. The goal was set to develop market demand for Marae Moana caught tuna that is best of class in quality, environmental sustainability, social justice, cultural benefit, and price. Stakeholders at that initial meeting included government agencies such as MMR, the NES, and Office of the Prime Minister, the Uiariki, traditional leaders, the local fishing industry, NGOs, and regional fisheries experts. As a result of that meeting, the Natural Currency Standard, or NCS Innovation Hub, was established under the leadership of the Prime Minister, and the concept of a natural currency standard was developed. The Innovation Hub consists of an advisory group, coordinator, and working groups on technical, environmental and social, culture and commercial aspects. Since the inception phase, the technical working group has undertaken considerable research, collective and individual consultations, and policy design and development to formulate the framework, consisting of an overarching policy and its fishery-specific standards. Our consultation process has revealed early that the name or term natural currency standard does not convey the concept well, and it's not a term well understood among stakeholders or the community. There is some level of confusion over finance and money as opposed to a natural resource management. As such, we've taken a name that exudes our culture and our identity, something that directly links the intent of this initiative. It is called the Manatiake o Te Moana framework, a policy and standards-based framework for offshore fisheries management. The policy will reflect Cook Islands' culture, values and expectations of Cook Islanders for our ocean resources, ensuring that they are managed by the Cook Islands to the highest achievable standards and in keeping with the nation's vision and planning well into the future. The policy will apply to all marine resources and accordingly recognises the various marine sectors, including offshore fisheries, aquaculture, small-scale and artisanal fisheries, and marine tourism. This policy will be implemented gradually across our marine sectors, with the first standard translating the policy's principles into meaningful and quantifiable benchmarks for managing our tuna resources, and an offshore fisheries standard for the longline fishery. With an abundant tuna fishery within our EEZ comes the responsibility of managing that fishery and all of the components that make up the engagement of humans in that fishery in a sustainable manner. As we examine those components, starting with fishing vessels, crew and fishing methods, we must also logically examine control mechanisms and licensing arrangements, catch documentation and certification schemes, fisheries monitoring, compliance and surveillance and inspections. We are also compelled to clearly articulate our process for prosecutions where violations of our boundaries or agreements occur. In creating this policy framework for tuna fisheries, best practice and the highest of industry standards for tuna will be taken into account. We do not manage our fisheries in isolation from the region nor from international bodies that set standards for regional or global fisheries. We are party to regional fisheries management organisations, and we are included the highest international dialogue for global fisheries management. The Cook Islands is at the forefront in the region for meeting and exceeding many existing international standards, such as the Marine Stewardship Council. However, the Manatiaki o Te Moana framework aims to take us beyond that. It will not be another certification scheme. This policy helps us to differentiate from those broad-based standards, reflecting the highest expectations that we set for ourselves, based upon best ethical and sustainable practices, and what is most important to us as Cook Islanders. The policy defines what is most important to us as the pillars upon which each of the standards are to be founded. Built upon a strong foundation of Cook Islands culture and values, those pillars are environmental sustainability, social responsibility, and economic benefit. To enshrine these pillars into the offshore fisheries standard, this directs us firstly to recognise that our ocean has always been and always will be the Marae Moana, the seafood basket for the Cook Islands, and fundamental to food security and the health and well-being of our people. The need to protect and conserve the health of this environment is critical to ensuring that our marine food basket continues to provide and that the marine species inhabiting our waters not only survive but thrive. Our country's needs and aspirations to derive economic benefit from careful and sustainable management of our offshore fisheries are constant, and MMR strives to consistently meet those needs and aspirations through the existing management regime. However, emerging issues continuously drive the need to review and evolve our fisheries management approaches. The standard for offshore fisheries is currently under development and intends to ensure that tuna caught in Cook Islands waters is traceable, high-quality fish product sourced from a healthy environment, caught, handled and processed in a manner consistent with the expectations of both the local and the international markets, as well as being able to contribute to a brand strategy. The standard must also cater for broader market access requirements, as we need our regulatory environment to be able to maintain access to markets such as the United States, Japan and China. Our social responsibility lies in our commitment to our people first and foremost, in ensuring a continued supply of fishes available for our own people, and that the livelihoods of Cook Islanders who rely on fishing to provide for their families and community is supported. But we must also act in a socially responsible way to ensure the safety and well-being of fishing crew and observers aboard fishing vessels in our waters. The advent of the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted globally on the fishing industry also. In meeting the terms of the Cape Town Agreement for the fair treatment of crew and for vessel safety, coupled with defining our offshore fisheries standard, we must also factor in how we will be able to implement the standard in the coming years. So ensuring that we continue to monitor and assess the fishery is critical, not only addressing any uncertainties, but ensuring we are prepared to take off and support our post-COVID-19 recovery. While the intent of the NCS initiative is to add value for sustainable products, these may not necessarily translate directly into added revenue in the current circumstances. Therefore, we cannot cater for the best scenario, but realistically address the current situation and allow for enough flexibility to adapt and to be responsive to the possibility of a future that may include additional stresses upon our fisheries, including the impacts of climate change. The offshore fisheries standard is work that will be some years in the making. It requires MMR to take stock of and review the environmental, social and economic performance indicators relevant to offshore fisheries that are already monitored. Prior to implementation, it will require thorough costs and benefit analyses to test government's affordability of the standards implementation, particularly against projected revenue generation. It may require changes to legislation or policy as pertains to MMR, Marae Moana and other stakeholders and participants in offshore fisheries. Therefore, assessment will be ongoing as we traverse an iterative approach of testing and retesting of the standard until we reach the best achievability factor for each element. This process will provide us with the opportunity to meet or incorporate relevant international and regional standards into our national framework. Verification and transparency elements will require robust monitoring frameworks to provide market assurances and to meet a potential independent auditing process. Each step that is taken in testing and assessment will see us progress to ensure that the benchmarks we set are robust and achievable. Our fishery is unique. Environmentally, on access to and availability of resources, our management regime, economies of scale, logistical and natural resource availability such as land and fresh water, our population, our proximity to supply chains, market demand and access, technological opportunities and infrastructure. Therefore, the framework for this policy and the standard for tuna fisheries is constructed to coincide with these factors in mind. This policy framework is called the Manatiaki o Te Moana framework. This name strengthens and deepens our understanding and the understanding of our Cook Islands people of the mission ahead. In closing, I wish to thank the Prime Minister for providing us with this exceptional opportunity to be a part of creating a legacy for the Cook Islands. As the policy nears completion, we can be confident that our best efforts were invested into it and that it has been as carefully and patiently crafted as the magnificent te baibai we saw presented this morning. That inherent in the professionalism, pragmatism and detail embedded in the development of this policy, our work has included Cook Islands' voices and culture, our deep connection with this ocean, and our aspirations for its long and healthy life. Me taki maha.
Thank you, Martha. Alexis. Right, I'm going to beg your indulgence while we set up for the next event. So it'll be a fireside chat or Zoom link with Now start the fire with our Honourable Prime Minister and our Deputy Prime Minister, as well as Mr. Peter Seligman, who's the founder of Conservation International and the current chairperson of Neatero. So if I may ask my IT crew, we go to our plan and everyone stand by.